You don't have
your beer.
Oh, it's out of frame, but now it's in frame, which is awesome. We're here to talk about Event Horizon.
Event Horizon.
Which is a great late 90s horror movie that still holds up, I think, and it's kind of become a cult classic.
Yeah.
And I think I told you when we were discussing it earlier, it was not well received when it was released.
Is that maybe like the prerequisite for a cult classic? That you have to be poorly received when you are first premiered?
Probably. Yeah,
probably.
Because
I feel like that's everything. Like The Princess Bride, nobody liked that when it came out.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I did not know that. That's one of my favorite movies.
I know.
Yeah.
Yep. Nope, they didn't like it.
So, yeah, not well received, but over the years, it's gotten a cult following, and I think part of it is because there is a fabled director's cut out there that people have been clamoring for, and I think that's kind of fueled it a little bit.
I would love to see it.
But it is, for what it is, even being rated R, a pretty aggressive horror movie.
Oh,
I would say
it's gory, and what I think I appreciate it. So I consider myself a horror connoisseur.
Yeah.
But you know more about sci-fi. I know some sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like that's what I liked about this movie is that I feel like it was a really true sci-fi horror film.
Yes.
Like it might even be more horror than sci-fi.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's science fiction in that the setting is simply in space, but I think it is more of a horror movie.
Yeah, which I really, really liked.
Yeah, I like that part of it too, and I like the mystique surrounding the plot. And I guess as a quick summary, if you've never seen Event Horizon, I would say first of all, go watch it. And where did you stream it? Because I don't even know.
Amazon Prime.
So it was just free with
Prime.
on
Amazon Prime.
So basically what it's about is there is a ship that's developed in the not too distant future, I'll talk about that in a minute, that is capable of faster than light travel by basically making a mini black hole and being able to fold space and time and go from where it currently is to light years away without any kind of issue.
Yep.
But something happens and it ends up potentially or apparently going to another dimension and then reappearing, and a rescue crew is sent out to try and salvage it, and then things kind of go haywire from there, basically.
Yes, and they've received a very disturbing transmission.
The TDRS did receive this single transmission.
And I will say, I don't normally get creeped out by things.
Yeah.
But I was watching this very late at night in the total dark.
Yeah.
In bed, and when I heard the transmission, I got a little irked, and I was like, I don't know if I want to watch this right now. And I kept watching, but it was upsetting.
So my buddy Darren and I, Darren, if you're watching this, every once in a while we'll randomly text each other like "Liberate, tu me," it's embarrassing. But yeah, because it's such a little quirky bit of the thing, but it's a Latin phrase that basically ends up meaning "save yourself from hell," essentially.
Yeah. And they think we got to save these people.
They misinterpret it at first and think that it says "save us," like "save me," whatever. Yeah, so it's got a great cast: Laurence Fishburne, Sam Neill.
There's Draco Malfoy's dad.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and actually, he was in The Patriot. Jason Isaacs.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep, he's great. He's in it too. For kind of a minor role for him, sort of. I mean, it's not like minor, but it's just not.
I felt that was the one thing I will say is I do feel like all of the cast is purposeful.
Yeah.
You don't need any really superfluous characters.
Right.
So that's nice.
Yeah, you can tell that they're teeing them up to be killed.
Yes.
But at the same time, like you said, it's not a ton of extra characters, and I think the way each of them goes has meaning within the plot, right?
Yeah, because it gets progressively worse and worse.
Yeah.
And by the end, it is body count. Let's go.
And I think some people might initially think this is a slasher movie, but it's not.
No.
It's very much like a psychological horror, but also there is concrete things. There are concrete things happening to it. There's a malevolent presence, essentially.
That can manifest itself physically.
Right. So I guess talking about the things we loved about the movie, and one of the things that I identified early on, this is one of the first things I loved about it when I saw it I saw it in the early 2000s. I was in college when I saw it, but just the design of the Event Horizon ship itself, I think is super cool. It's spiky and very kind of gothic and...
Well, and they make the comment, which I appreciated, when they're walking through that tunnel, the guy's like, this looks like a meat grinder. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yes, it does. Why are we not more concerned that the ship you are literally walking on is something that could kill you? Which it is.
And I love that there's sort of a pseudo-scientific explanation of it reduces your magnetic field so you don't interfere with the gravity drive. And
you're like, okay.
You're like, okay, that's
sure.
cool. It just looks really nice on camera, basically.
It does, yes, it does.
So the design of the ship is really cool, and I guess I'll let you. What do you like about it?
I think what I liked about it, because I knew nothing about this movie.
Kim went in blind. I was like, I'm not going to reveal anything about it.
And I watched it for the first time last night and today, so I had no idea what to expect, and I was pleasantly surprised by the gore and like what I would call a unforgiving sort of horror. That, like, it doesn't, like, there are little bits that start to get you thinking about what's happening. Really nice pace. I thought the pace was really strong. I was never bored. And the moments that they slowed down to fill in the plot were nice moments between the characters where you learn a little bit about their backstory. Yeah. But again, nothing ever felt like too prescriptive or expositional. Like, everything felt very intentional.
And the backstory is necessary because the whole thing is this entity builds on your fears.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, that's a big part of what makes it
And there
work.
were a couple that I'm like, I don't really know what this is. Like, a couple characters that I'm like, I wish that had been flushed out a little bit more, because I don't like at one point the guy where he's got like the scar on his chest and then it
I was like, did he have open
him?
heart surgery or something?
I'm like, what is the scar from?
Yeah.
I don't know that it was necessary. I didn't mind that he was opened up and hung. That's fine.
I was reminded of that today, and I wonder if Jason Isaacs just in reality had surgery at some point.
Yeah, he might have just had a scar.
Yeah.
But so, and maybe.
So the character development's awesome. I think there are some dodgy effects here and there, but for the most part, it works pretty well. And I think the scene with the airlock with Justin, like Baby Bear,
God.
like that is like a terrible. That's a fear of mine. Even
it
though
is.
There's no way I'm ever going to be in an airlock in space.
And
but,
it reminded me of Total Recall.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yep.
And what I liked a lot about that scene, a lot of the scenes, is where the character, like, where you have someone whose like literal veins are like popping out of their body, and the people around them are like, take these steps. Here's a very logical way to approach the situation where you are dying. And I like, and maybe I had the Matrix in my mind.
Well, Laurence, I mean, you're thinking of Laurence Fishburne, right? Like, and I mean, he does a good job as the captain. I mean, he's the captain in both movies, but
and that's where I just kept having like Matrix flashes.
Morpheus.
Yes. I'm like, interesting.
Well, that whole scene where he's screaming like, "Okay, curl yourself into a ball, exhale all your air." Like, clearly in this world, there's a procedure for this because it happens sometimes for whatever reason, like a ruptured spacesuit or whatever it might be. But like when he spins around and just spews out blood and everything is, and then they're having to put him in like the sleep pod, I guess, to get him home so he can be patched up or whatever. Yeah, so there's some really good gore in this. If you're a gore hound and you like that about horror films, you get that here. But again, the director's cut apparently took it to a whole other level, I guess this is a question for you. If that fabled 2 hour and 20 minute, however long cut exists, do you think it would be a better movie for it or not?
No, I don't think it would be a better movie. I think it would be a fun in my sick, twisted mind movie to watch. But no, I do not think it would be better, because I do think a lot of like the flashes that you get of what happened to the crew, or flashes of the current crew, like in this hell dimension, it's all very fast, but it's impactful. Like, it did enough for me to be like, oh crap, like this is not good.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of dread that builds as things progress that I think is missing from a lot of horror movies, and it works well. I mean, now having seen it multiple times, like a little bit of that is reduced, of course, because you kind of know how it's going to play out, but I still think it holds up pretty good in 2024 today.
Well, I mean, considering the fact that I had never seen it.
Right.
And I think there are a lot of movies that were made however many years ago, and you watch them now, like Pumpkinhead would be
which I did like a lot.
I liked that movie. Clearly it is not as horrifying as it was when I saw it when I was like 12. But Event Horizon, I mean, again, I saw it for the first time in 2024, and I really liked it. It didn't feel dated to me, and maybe it's because it takes place in the future. But
and so that, I guess before I get into that, what else did you like about the movie that maybe we have not talked about yet?
I really liked how they use the science fiction to add to the horror and the circumstances. Like, one scene I really, really loved was when they were in the gateway cabin core thing, and the coolant is floating around, but then they bring back gravity. And so I think his name was Cooper, maybe, when he grabs Justin, and the coolant now is splashing on them because gravity is back. I was like, that's so cool. Like, that's what would happen. Or the body, the
when
frozen body that shatters. Like, that's what would happen. And so I like that it felt very realistic in the science fiction, in the horror.
Yes, I
agree.
And
they used it.
And I mean, I love the whole idea of, and this is just nerdy me, but like the idea of let's create a mini black hole, because theoretically that could maybe work in terms of like, you know, having that much density and warping space and time, but it would be really hard to do that, I think, from a physics perspective. But that's like a whole different.
They did it in like 2047 or 2040, or when did they do it? This leads
me into my things that I don't think are necessarily detriments to the movie, but that don't hold up as well as when it was released, maybe. So I guess I'll start with some of those.
Yeah.
I don't know, unless there's anything else that you loved about it that is worth kind of talking. So, okay, the opening sequence kind of gives you a timeline of events that have led to the creation of the Event Horizon. So it's like 2015, right? And of course, we're talking about this in 2024. 2015, the first permanent colony on the moon. Like, NASA is still struggling to get people back to the moon. They're supposed to do it within the next year, but I still don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. And then I think it's in 2030 something, the first mining colony on Mars.
Yeah.
And then 2040, the Event Horizon is developed, and then it disappears.
And 2047, it's back.
And we were talking about this. I'm like, why not just set it in 2147?
Yeah.
Or something. Like, just give yourself a little bit of breathing room. And
right, yes.
A lot of science fiction movies do this, where they set it like 20 years from now, and there's just no way.
It's like they try to make it feel like a looming dread. Like in 1997, if you're like, oh no, in 2047, this is what we could be experiencing, which no, you won't. But and it's like Back to the Future.
Oh yeah, 2015.
Yeah. Like,
which I saw an interview with, who was it that directed that? It's the guy that directed Forrest Gump, Robert. The guy that directed Forrest Gump.
Z, isn't it?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm having a total.
I don't know how to say it.
Brain fart. He directed Castaway.
Zemeckis.
Yes, Robert Zemeckis.
I just didn't know that's how you said it. I knew it starts with a Z.
So somebody asked him about that in Back to the Future, and he was like, "It's a comedy." He's like, "I'm not worried about that." He did not care.
And he's not wrong.
He's not right. Yeah,
it is a comedy.
He's like, we were literally thinking, how can we get the most laughs out of this situation?
Yeah.
Then you know.
But then when you have a science fiction horror, when you're not trying to get laughs, maybe just give it 100 more years.
Yeah. So that part was a little wonky. Plus, and this is a really stupid thing to nitpick, I do not like the opening credits or the end credits, because it's got this really cheesy rock music that. So what I'm comparing it to, and there's a lot of comparisons you can make here. I think about a movie like Alien, which is timeless, right? Not cheesy. It does things well. It doesn't matter when that movie was made. It holds up.
Yeah.
I thought about, so you can see clearly this takes a lot of inspiration from Alien and The Shining, especially, actually, and a lot of other movies, and even Aliens, actually, in one scene. But anyway, I don't know. Those were some of the things I didn't like.
Because it does date it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I still do, however, I should have talked about this with things I like. I do like the one-liners in it, because
oh my god, so many good one-liners. Which is then where it's like, it starts to edge on, not a comedy, but I feel like that's where it felt more like a horror to me, because so many horror movies have those like one-liners that we all like, whatever. And science fiction, I feel like, doesn't give itself the room to make fun of itself, where horror does.
Yes. The only example I can think of where sci-fi does allow that is Galaxy Quest, which is one of my favorite movies. Have you ever seen that?
But that's a comedy.
It is a comedy.
But that's a comedy.
But it's sci-fi too, right? But it's like Back to the Future. It's sci-fi, but it's comedy.
Yes, but that's a comedy.
Yeah.
Event Horizon is not a comedy.
No, it is not a comedy. Not at all.
So when you have those comedic moments, that's where I was like, okay, this is where the horror is reflecting back on itself.
Yeah. So, and I'm trying to think of anything else that just stood out to me as not holding up super well. I mean, I will say that, even though I do love the movie because of the premise and the way the horror is executed, it is a little bit scattershot. Like, I don't know that it necessarily gets to the point of being like, illegible and you can't figure out what's going on. But but also at the same time, I feel like if it had been more concrete, that would have detracted from it in some ways.
Yes, and that's where there are a couple times where I'm like, wait, is he under the influence? Is he not? Is he like? There were some parts where I'm like, I'm not totally sure.
Is who under the influence? What was?
Is Sam Neill? Is he like?
Right,
because every now and then, like they'd be like under the influence of the darkness of the evil, but then they would like come out of it and be like, where am I? What am I doing? And there were times where he seemed like he was, but then he wasn't. And then he was like really under the influence and like, I'm home. This is my home.
That was the only piece of it. You're right. That's the only piece of it that to me was a little bit weird. Like, how did we get from point A to point B with that?
And I just had this thought. He's like, he created the ship. Mm-hmm. So it's like he's the creator. So in a lot of ways, like, it's his child, and so therefore he becomes the ship because he created it. But I don't think they made that clear. I just came up with that.
Yeah.
But it is. I felt like if they were really going to lean into this thing of like him being like he destroys the other vessel and he's like, no, we are all going to be on this dimension ship and blah, blah, blah. There were like snippets of it, but like they made it seem almost intentional in the end that he like knew this could happen or wanted this to happen. But that wasn't consistent with the beginning as much.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a leap, and I guess it could be explained by the fact that the ship becomes alive in some capacity and wants, because like you said, as he's the creator, they want him, or it wants him to be there with it. I think the ending arrives kind of quickly. I don't know if I'd say too quickly, but it verges on that for me anyway. Like I don't know what I would have done to kind of.
Because that's why I don't know how I would have.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too quick because there's nothing else. Everything feels resolved.
Yeah,
like
it does.
That's why everything feels resolved. So I didn't feel like it was too quick.
Yeah,
I was okay with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So overall, would you recommend this one?
Heck yes.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, if you like horror, and I would say primarily, if you like horror, see it.
Yeah.
If you like sci-fi, see it too, because it's got a lot of worth in that regard.
It does,
also.
but I appreciated it as a horror fan more than anything.
Yeah, and there's actually been a rumor, I think it's kind of floundering at the moment, that they were going to make a TV series out of this. Like, out of the idea of like the ship coming back and like that sort of thing. So I don't know if that would be good or bad, because I think they would run the risk of eventually having to explain more about like where it went.
They would, and I don't want to know, you know? Or no, don't do it.
So Event Horizon, and I will add to this that I picked up the recently released 4K special edition of it. If you're a 4K fan, I was not that impressed with the transfer, but the steelbook is cool. It's got a cool design to it, so there's that. I don't know how much better it really looks than streaming, honestly. Usually I can tell a pretty big difference, but I didn't really see a huge difference here.
Okay.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Anything else?
No, I really enjoyed it. It is brutally violent at times, which I appreciated, but it never felt like unmotivated, like ridiculous. Any comedy came from the characters themselves.
Especially Cooper.
Yeah,
yes. he's funny.
Reacting to a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is one, we talked about this when we were texting, there's one scene where he's in space and basically gets ejected from the ship and he's trying to get back, and he just spouts this insanely hilarious one-liner as he's going back to the ship.
There's a lot that comes out at the end, which is nice, but yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, what are we doing next? I don't even know.
Well, we had talked about doing...
a feature film?
A feature film. It was one of the older ones we were talking... Was it Wolfman? No.
Was it Dracula?
Maybe.
There was some... I remember...
We said...
Yeah.
Well, you know what you could do is go back and watch the video.
I could do that.
And find out what we said.
We'll be back with a classic review soon. Oh, and Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey too.
Yes!
Which that's like 2 weeks from now, I think.
That should be soon.
Yeah, so
I'm excited.
I saw it's playing in a theater near us, so we'll go see it.
Yes.
We'll review it, and it'll be
excited.
awesome. Yeah, cool. Okay. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon.